The collapse of the Roman Empire is often portrayed as a sudden catastrophe, explained through barbarian invasions or incompetent emperors. Yet empires of Rome's magnitude do not vanish overnight. They erode gradually from within, long before the final shock arrives. Behind the collapsing borders and failing legions stood a deeper problem, an economic system stretched beyond its structural limits. Rome did not fall simply because it was attacked. It fell because the economic engine that once sustained its dominance could no longer support the empire's size, complexity, and permanent demands. At its peak, Rome commanded the most advanced economic network the ancient world had ever seen. Roads connected distant provinces, ports synchronized trade across seas, and markets operated with remarkable coordination. Taxes funded armies, infrastructure, and urban life on an imperial scale. This prosperity created an illusion of permanence, but Roman wealth was not rooted in sustainable productivity. It depended on continuous inflows of resources extracted from newly conquered territories. The system functioned smoothly, but only under conditions that could not last indefinitely. Rome's economy was, at its core, an economy of conquest. Expansion delivered land, slaves, tribute, and taxes. Each victory injected fresh wealth into the system, concealing structural weaknesses. Growth was not optional. It was essential. Fiscal stability, labor supply, and social order all depended on continual expansion. As long as Rome conquered, economic contradictions remained invisible. The moment expansion slowed, those contradictions moved to the center of imperial life. By the 2nd century, Rome reached its territorial limits. There were no wealthy regions left to absorb, no easy victories remaining. Expansion stalled, but the imperial system was still structured for growth. Military costs remained enormous. Administrative expenses continued to rise. Rome had built an economy that could only function under expansionary conditions. And now those conditions were gone. This imbalance triggered a fiscal crisis. Revenues stagnated while expenditures remained rigid. Instead of restructuring the economy or reducing costs, Roman leadership chose a solution that appeared painless in the short term. They manipulated the currency, postponing reform while planting the seeds of long-term instability. The silver content of Roman coins was gradually reduced. At first, the change was subtle. Coins looked the same and carried imperial authority, but their intrinsic value declined. Rome increased money supply without increasing real wealth. This decision delayed political consequences, but it destabilized the economic foundation of the empire. As debased coins circulated, purchasing power eroded. Prices rose, trust weakened, economic calculation became uncertain. Once confidence in money collapses, markets lose efficiency. Trade slows, investment disappears. Rome's unified monetary system, once a pillar of imperial integration, became a force of fragmentation. Merchants adapted defensively. Prices increased to hedge against uncertainty. Barter returned. Local exchange replaced integrated trade. What had once been a single economic space fractured into regional systems, each governed by different standards of value and trust. At the same time, Rome's dependence on slave labor undermined productivity. Enslaved workers displaced free labor, suppressing wages and eliminating incentives for innovation. Productivity stagnated. Technological progress slowed. Control replaced efficiency, a trade-off that becomes fatal over time. Free citizens were pushed out of economic participation. Unemployment increased. The tax base shrank. Fewer producers meant fewer taxpayers, intensifying fiscal stress. Rome was not just losing revenue, it was losing economic vitality itself. To compensate, the state raised taxes. Farmers were squeezed relentlessly. Small landowners collapsed and sold their land to elites. Wealth concentrated rapidly. The Roman middle class, the backbone of stability, eroded. Economic power became centralized, rigid, and fragile. Without a broad base of independent producers, Rome lost flexibility. Shocks became more destructive. Growth gave way to stagnation. To prevent unrest, the state expanded welfare. Free grain preserved order but masked deeper failure. Rome was no longer sustaining its population through production. It was managing decline through distribution. Rome's survival now depended on fragile supply chains. Any disruption threatened catastrophe. The empire had lost resilience. Its economic foundation was exposed. Infrastructure, once Rome's greatest advantage, began to decay. Roads crumbled, aqueducts failed, and maintenance costs exceeded available resources. These systems had been built for expansion and heavy use, not for stagnation. As economic output declined, the empire could no longer afford the physical foundations that held it together. Decline became visible in stone and dust. The army remained enormous, but increasingly unsustainable. Soldiers were paid with debased currency and irregular rations. Morale eroded. Recruitment became difficult. The very institution designed to protect the empire became another financial burden draining the system. To compensate, Rome hired foreign mercenaries. Loyalty shifted from the empire to payment. Military power became transactional. Once economic credibility collapses, authority follows. Rome's monopoly on force weakened alongside its currency. The bureaucracy expanded to manage crisis. More officials, more controls, more regulations. Instead of restoring productivity, Rome attempted to administrate decline. Complexity replaced efficiency. Every intervention reduced flexibility further. Labor became immobilized. Farmers were legally tied to their land to preserve tax revenue. Economic freedom disappeared. Innovation collapsed. What remained was survival, not growth. The empire split administratively, but the economic damage was already done. The East adapted, the West collapsed. Divergence revealed the underlying truth. Economic structure determines survival more than borders or titles. Urban life shrank, cities emptied, trade hubs turned silent, monetary exchange gave way to subsistence. Rome's economy reverted centuries backward, not through invasion, but exhaustion. By the time invasions intensified, collapse was already inevitable. Military defeat was a symptom, not the cause. Rome had consumed its economic future to sustain its present. Empires rarely fall because they are attacked. They fall because their economic systems stop producing resilience. Rome's collapse was written in its fiscal decisions centuries earlier. What followed was not immediate darkness, but a long adjustment. The Roman world simplified. Complexity vanished. The price of unsustainable growth was paid over generations. Rome teaches a permanent lesson. Expansion can hide fragility, but never remove it. Economic foundations matter more than glory. When money loses credibility, productivity stalls and systems become rigid. Collapse becomes mathematical, not political. Rome did not fall suddenly. It declined logically, step by step, decision by decision. The Roman Empire collapsed not because it was weak, but because its economic structure made strength impossible to sustain. History does not repeat, but its economics always rhyme.